This is part 2 of the 11 most racist presidents, according to Ibram X Kendi, author of Stamped at the Beginning. And so far, we've discussed George W. Bush, John Calvin Coolidge, Dwight D. Eisenhower, James K. Polk, Woodrow Wilson, and Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Today, we pick up with number 5. And who is number 5? Well, my third least favorite president. Yes, I've ranked them. And number 3 is Thomas Jefferson. And there's so much here, I don't even know where to start. I'm going to try to condense it, okay? Ibram and I agree on a lot of this, okay? In his notes on the state of Virginia, Jefferson said, "The blacks are inferior to the whites in the endowment both of body and mind." He intentionally bred enslaved black women, telling George Washington, "I consider a woman who brings a child every 2 years as more profitable than the best man on the farm." He wanted to deport black people to a different country. More specifically, he wanted to deport black children to a different country because he felt that the United States could not support blacks and whites over an extended period of time. And, well, the older blacks would just die off anyways. So that took care of that. And Sally Hemings, the forced concubine who resembled his deceased wife. Need I say more? Now we're going to skip number 4 for a minute and go to number 3. Number 3 is Ronald Reagan. I grew up with Ronald Reagan, okay? And I'm sure a lot of you remember Reagan. He's the man who gave us a new stereotype for black women, the welfare queen. He announced his run for presidency in Mississippi. During President Reagan's first year in office, the median income of black families declined by 5.2%, and the number of poor Americans who were disproportionately black increased by 2.2 million. Yes. Can anybody say war on drugs, which established minimum sentencing for drug crimes and led to the mass incarceration of black and brown drug offenders over the next few decades? It is still impacting us to this very day. And those were just the highlights. Andrew Jackson is number 2. He is my 4th hated president. Or maybe he ties with number 3. I can't remember. But he's way up there. He's way up there. And you know what disgusts me? Is that he has a statue in the middle of Jackson Square in New Orleans. This man, who was responsible for the Trail of Tears, has a statue in the middle of Jackson Square in my second happiest place. It used to be number 1 until they got that governor. Yeah, that's a different conversation, regardless. If you are not familiar with the Trail of Tears, it was the forced displacement of approximately 60,000 Native American people. On top of that, there were additional thousands of Native Americans who were ethnically cleansed. That's a polite way of saying that they were massacred by the United States government. Prior to becoming president, Jackson waged wars in Florida at the behest of the United States government, destroying the safe havens of formerly enslaved fugitives, forcing them to either flee or be re-enslaved. Jackson had something against Native Americans. He didn't like black people either. And finally, at number 1, which coincidentally is my number 1 least liked president, okay, and also most racist president, a man we have talked about several times, Andrew Johnson. I loathe this man. I do. I felt it in my chest. After the Civil War ended and Lincoln was assassinated, Johnson took over Reconstruction. His version was to offer amnesty, property rights, and voting rights to all of the highest Confederate officials. Johnson put an end to 40 acres and a mule when he ordered the return of land to pardoned Confederates. He opposed the 14th and the 15th Amendments to the U.S. Constitution, going so far as to veto both bills. The radical Republicans had enough votes to override him. He even told black leaders that poor whites had been abused by enslaved people and said that the 14th Amendment discriminated against white people. I'm not lying. He said that the 14th Amendment, which does not call out race, discriminated against white people. Yeah. So there you have it. The 11 most racist presidents, according to Ibram X Kendi. Well, 10. And so far, I don't disagree. So, let's see if, through our discussions on presidents and the civil rights, if maybe we can add some, or maybe replace some on his list.